I'm walking these pathways of time, hunting, always trying to find a place I can call my own. Some place that feels like home. We're lost on journey through this incredibly mystic realm, our lives playing out like a soap opera dream, the strangest far out film. Intense our wandering probes, the search for higher spaces, moments of weird recognition with familiar yet odd traces of moments and passing faces. Elder souls' eyes seemingly embraced myriads of times prior, helping me to mark my changes here as we pass lifetime, knowing we're more than just passing strangers. Friends from different time with old promises to meet, here we greet again in streets bound to each other's lives. It reminds us all of the grander scheme of this most amazing and wondrous dream. Each moment changing just because we pass through. Thankful always I am for moments I'm able to share with you. Welcome, friends. I'm your host, Zen Garcia. This is FallenAngels.tv. And strange as it may seem, the song prior on the DNA and the Children of Cain was written and produced by Rachel Cohen and Cynthia Grace, which are two very wise and very educated individuals. Rachel is a Hebraic scholar, has been involved in the translation of ancient texts for 30 plus years now, and is very well respected in the various circles among rabbis and those that have spent lifetime in studying the ancient discourse. And her sidekick and friend Cynthia is has helped her to understand the Christian perspective and side of how the non-Jewish, non-Hebraic individual has perspective on the word. And so they work in tangent together to cover a lot of information, and they were also one of those groups, one of those confirming witnesses that the Most High led me to when I came to knowledge and discernment of this information. As far as my fourth book, Lucifer, Father of Cain, and all of that, all that entails with what occurred in the garden and how it connects to the enmity between the seed of the woman and the seed of the serpent, and the ongoing war that began even before our incarnation into flesh form, and that really the original sin has connection to our prior estate, our first estate, and our spiritual embodiment. Before we were hosted in flesh form, before we took up occupancy here in these bodies and on this fallen planet, in this fallen state of being. And so this ongoing war, which is reflected in the continuance of what is the angst, the enmity between the serpentseed and the seed of the woman, will be ongoing and have continuance until Christ comes again for harvest, and every knee shall bow and every tongue confess, and then all will be brought to judgment, and everybody will be accounted for as far as our behaviors, our actions, the things that we did during embodiment in lifetime and while we were here on the planet with the time that we were blessed to have. Because lifetime is really short. And even though it seems like, there's plenty of time every day, eventually, your time runs out. And eventually you're called to either death or to what will be the upcoming gathering of the church, and that judgment will then ensue, and that all those things, all the chances, all the opportunities that we had in our lifetime to service the church, to seek out the secrets, to study the gospel, and to build relationship with the Most High, the Father and the Son, all those things will be called into question. And we will, then have to regard how it is that we spend our time, and hopefully you had coming to discernment, prioritized the kingdom, and did what you could to awaken yourself and others to remembrance of not only the secrets, but who we are, why we're here, what all of this is about, and there's really, in the course of our lifetimes, there's very little that really stands out and that is immortalized. Most everything, as far as just trying to survive and make it into the world, all that is, even though it's necessary, it's wasted time. And so, that's why in Matthew chapter 7, where all of these different people of God, when they come to Christ and they ask Him, we did all these things in your name, we helped the poor and the widow and the orphan, and did this or did that, and He says, away from me, you workers of iniquity, because I know you not. And how true this will play out for so many, especially those that think that, once saved, always saved, and that they never have to do anything as far as their works in order to honor the blessings and the opportunity that Christ has extended to all of us, as far as being able to follow in the example that He laid before us in prioritizing the kingdom and also serving as a foot washer to humanity. And so every day we have chance and every day we have opportunity, and we should try to, at least with certain part of that day, to make good use of it, and to not squander that opportunity, and to do what we can to do something that would be of benefit to kingdom. And so I hope that all of you had blessed holidays, and that you have much to be thankful for and to find gratitude for, and to just give honor and praise and worship to the Creator for. And I pray that you have family and loved ones and children and parents and those that are close to you that you can share the bounty, the blessings that we are every day just poured out upon us, that the Most High gives to us so much more than we really deserve. And it's out of the kindness and the compassion and the love that He feels for us in being able to provide all these things without asking for anything but our love, and our assistance in working for the kingdom. And these are critical times. Many of you are or had not been just even a few years back awakened to what's going on in world, and um, it's been a difficult struggle. And I do welcome you, Peace and Jazz, and those of you that are in the chat room, those of you that will come later, those of you that will tap into the archives. Today's show will be a follow-up on something that I had been doing as far as series on Revolution Radio when I had first worked on a show with Fritz Springmeier talking about the bloodlines of the Illuminati. And then just recently, this past Wednesday, I did a show with Dr. Joy also on the bloodlines of the Illuminati and the what is the third book of her Beguiled series, her new 3-book series, Beguiled from Eden to Armageddon, where in the third book she does focus on the garden parable, what occurred and how it led to the world condition that we are dealing with now, as far as the royals and the elites and many of the presidents being all blood related and their connections to the divine right to rule, and how all this is also connected to the wheat and the tares, and also to the parable of the goat and the sheep. And so we'll elaborate some on that today. Also, as part of that series, I talked about the investigation that was put forth by a world famous geneticist who was hired by one of the Illuminati personas. He was part of the lineage, and that he had told this individual, this geneticist, that his bloodline had taught to him and his fathers and grandfathers and those that preceded him that they knew first off that their father was not Adam, and that their father in truth was the devil, and that their bloodline, the line of Cain, was strange in aspect and genetically different, and they all believed they had 3-strand DNA, and that they were predisposed through the Rh negative factor and other psychical anomalies to have abilities which are considered extrasensory. And that is one of the reasons why they interbreed, intermarry, and don't go too much out of their own circles and bloodlines, even though it leads to a schizoid nature in their having married close cousins, and in keeping the bloodline pure in that way. That the insanity also ran through these particular bloodlines because of the close-knit connections and familial ties, even to the point where brothers and sisters and things of that nature have been, and sons marrying their mothers. I mean, all kind of weird, strange relating, as we know it, like Nimrod marrying Semiramis, and certain Egyptian pharaohs marrying their sisters or their mothers, or fathers marrying the daughters. I mean, just creepy closeness. Anyways, so I did cover in that show, talked about why it is that they did that, and showed how it was that the elites know and believe and also support the premise of my 4th book, Lucifer, father Cain, they do not count Adam as their father, nor do they worship the same God, Yahweh Elohim, that we do as followers of, of being spiritual Israel. And hello, Jose. And so, anyways, I'm going to go ahead and go into the parable of the sower and kind of set the premise for this show. Next week, I will be going back into the series that I've been doing on the book of Atam and Ua. And also know that tomorrow night I'll be joining John the Baptist from 9:30 to 11 on his show at tribulation-now.org to speak about the sons of God, pre-existence, the cup of forgetfulness, things of that nature, our prior state, and the connections to what I consider to be the original sin, and how that ties into and connects to who we are in this embodiment and the circumstances that we deal with when being born into the flesh and into this fallen world, and into the specific scenarios, circumstances, and situations that we find ourselves in. And that, some of that is also connected to what I speak about and determine to be as election, pre-election, and that election and how we were and the things that we did in our previous spiritual embodiment, that is also what determines who we are and what kind of family situation, things of that nature we are going to be born into coming into this lifetime. And so it's the same thing as Jacob I favored and Esau I hated, and why it is that these two children, though they had not yet or even been born, and not even had done any kind of action or behavior or determination as far as their intent and the ways that they were, which could honestly yield our Creator, who should be, according to our belief, a compassionate and benevolent and loving God, that unless you understand about our previous embodiment and our prior state, it just does not make sense why one was favored and the other hated when they were yet babes and had not yet been born. All that, of course, would not make sense unless you knew and had discernment upon predestination and those things which I elaborate upon in great detail in my 7th book, Skyfall, The Angels of Destiny. And in that book, I break down all this information in great detail with all the source reference and scriptures that not a lot of people understand, nor have they had chance to read. And I include passages from many different wisdom sources that are not recognizable to those that do not understand these concepts in this kind of a way. And so, do look for join us if you can for that show. Again, it will be tomorrow evening on tribulation-now.org, and then also on December 21st, I believe it is. On December 21st, I'll be joining John the Baptist again on Tribulation-Now to do a show on the book of Atam and Ua, of which I've been doing a series in 2 parts already, and we'll pick up again next week. And for those that don't know what that is all about, the Book of Adam and Ua is a 5500 BC Thracian text which preceded the ancient Sumerian texts and cultures. And we know that the ancient Sumerians were followers of and worshippers of the Anunnaki, the sons of Anak and the fallen angels, what we call the rebel angels and also the watchers, and that these kind of things are referenced in the Book of Enoch as well as the Book of Giants, and that this particular Thracian text is a Christian document, very ancient Christian document, and because it precedes the Sumerian culture, it gives verification to that and veracity to the knowledge of the Most High and the Father and the Son, and that the Bible was not based upon, nor written or forged or copied from the Sumerian teachings. In fact, it's kind of vice versa, that the original knowledge had everything to do with knowledge of the Father and the Son and the Trinity, the Holy Spirit, and just like with the series on the Star of Bethlehem, which depicts that the Most High had encrypted into the stars, into the sun, the moon, the stars, and the various celestial bodies in the heavens, the birth and also the crucifixion, death, and resurrection of Christ, and that these kind of things were reflected with not only the movements of the sun, the moon, and the stars, but also in earthquakes, the blood red moon, the eclipses, things of that nature, the rising of Jupiter and the constellation of Leo, and how Christ is known as the Lion of Judah. All these things precede and also confirm that Christ was Yeshua, Jesus Christ was the Son of God and the incarnation of the Most High into flesh form, and that he came into world through virgin birth, and that he was completely different in all circumstances as far as his birth, incarnation, death, resurrection, all those things. He was completely different from a normal, what we consider normal human beings. So, all right, let's go ahead and go into the foundation of this parable of the sower, because once you understand this particular revelation, there's no denying what is being spoken about in Genesis chapter 3. And that the whole parable of Eve eating the fruit from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, that led to, first, their loss of immortality and their loss of their bright nature, their being cast out of the upper heavens, and their being banished, exiled to the lower earth, and that once that exile and that banishment was incorporated into their lives, that they would then suffer the consequences and fulfill the prophetic nature of those prophecies that were levied against them, and also the serpent in Genesis chapter 3, that once they were transformed into flesh, banished, and exiled to the earth, Eve would become pregnant with the firstborn son of the devil, Cain, and that Adam would have to work the soil to bring forth sustenance to feed what would be the future progeny of his children, and that also on this planet and in this fallen state of being, in this fallen world, we would have played out in lifetime and in through the eras, epochs, and histories of what is the Second World Age, the age of our flesh embodiment, our incarnation into flesh form, that there would be this war between the seed of the woman and the seed of the serpent, and that this would be ongoing until Christ came again, sent his angels out as reapers, that the wheat and the tares would be allowed to grow together until the time of the harvest. And Dr. Joy and I covered this and spoke about it this past Wednesday. And I'll be making that broadcast available sometime over the course of this week once I burn it. Do know that I do have access to the archives now. I didn't even know that Revolution Radio had an archive section, but they do. And so it takes me a little while, but I will eventually get the show uploaded and available to you. You can find it on my YouTube channel under Endeavor Freedom, and that I'll actually post a link to it in the chat room, and that you can already find the show that I did with Rachel Cohen and Fritz Springmeier and Dr. Joy and the Prophecy Club and others on this particular site, which covers this information as well. Okay, no, you didn't miss anything, Jazz. I'm about to go into the text and explain the parable of the sower. Alright. So, let's look at this. Oh, I wanted to answer a question that Jazz had asked me in the email before we go into the text, which I thought it was pretty interesting. And so let me read this real quick. She says, Shalom, dear brother. The questions I had was that it is mentioned in Genesis that there was food in the garden for them to eat. But then it states that they did not eat until they fell. Or was it that they ate and had to digest food, etc.? Also, why is it that no women are mentioned in the Gospel of Nicodemus as far as when Yahushua went into Sheol to take out the patriarchs? I've read somewhere that women are to become as men before they can go to paradise, or something like that. I also know that we were most likely both sexes in our prior estate. Also, dear brother, could you save me a copy of the second edition book, Lucifer, the Father of Cain? And of course, and yes, I will do that for you, Jazz. And also, for those that are interested, I do have copies, the second edition of Lucifer, Father of Cain, that was exclusive for the Prophecy Club, that I did not make available anywhere else. I am going to be selling those and making them available to you if you're interested. Just contact me at zengarcia.com. They're normally sell for $25 each, and that's, I make them freely available to you and autograph them, without any extra charge. But until January, I'm going to make them available for $15 a piece. And this edition also includes almost 50 plus more pages, which it covers that story that I told you about, the geneticist story about the 3-strand DNA and how the elites know that they are their father is not Adam but the devil, and all of those things. Also, the Bible code and other information is included with this new edition. And I tell you how to find the Bible code and to verify it for yourself so that you can see that it is indeed encoded into the Torah. And interestingly enough, it's encoded in Genesis chapter 3, where the garden parable begins. And there's 7 different matrices overlaid through the Torah, and that it goes even to Ephesians chapter 6, which is the chapter on the powers, the principalities, the rulers of darkness, not of this world, wickedness in high places, which to me is, a verification of the exploits from the beginning to what is the end, for the fallen angels and for Satan and the hybrid bloodline and lineage that was born to them. All right, now answering the other questions. As far as the food in the garden, now there's a passage from Psalms 78 which speaks about angels' food. So it's my opinion that angels can eat and drink also, but that it's a different kind of energy interaction, and that because angels do not have digestive systems, or are wearing flesh, not that they can't, because of course we know fallen angels can possess flesh bodies, even like the swine, and that if they are in possession of bodies, that certainly they would utilize the faculties of those bodies. But in this particular passage, it does cite that the manna was angels' food, and so there's something to the angels eating, and that even Adam and Eve, before they fell, before they lost their immortality, and before they were transformed into flesh, they were given and allowed to eat from the various fruits of the garden, and they were warned to not eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, of which when they ate from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, it caused them to lose their immortality, to lose their bright nature, and to be transformed into flesh. And then it was after being transformed into flesh that Eve was beguiled by the serpent and impregnated with Cain, and that Adam would have to work the soil to bring forth food and sustenance for his children, and that there would be this enmity between the seed of the woman and the seed of the serpent. That all of that was prophetically spoken about, and that would happen once they were transformed into flesh, exiled and banished here to the earth. But I'm going to read these. It's verse 23 through 25, Psalm 78. It says, "Though he had commanded the clouds from above and opened the doors of heaven, and had rained down manna upon them to eat, and had given them of the corn of heaven, man did eat angels' food. He sent them meat to the full." And so, we know the whole story of Moses and the children of Israel, and how they wandered in the wilderness for 40 years because the Most High was waiting for those that had embraced paganism and idolatry to die off from the children of Israel. That Moses had implored the Most High to not kill them and to not decimate them, as he did Korah when he had the earth consume he and his family for hiding the gold and silver and the idols. And so he simply allowed them to wander into the wilderness until Israel was pure and was of a remnant that was worthy of inheriting the promised land, and that would, listen to his commandments and his directives for going in and inheriting the land, and that they would be commanded to wipe out every man, woman, and child of the seed of the sons of Anak, because they were considered leaven, and that if any of them were allowed to live and to assimilate, that they would pollute again the children of Israel, which is exactly what happened. Because Joshua and the mighty men, they got tired of warring and fighting, and so they allowed some of the giants and the children of the sons of Anak to live, and then we have the Philistine Goliath and his brothers, and the war between David and Goliath and his family. So all of that was part of why he told them to spare no man, woman, or child. All right, let me see the other part of the question, and then we'll go into. As far as the women mentioned in the Gospel of Nicodemus, this is really strange, and it has been to me as well, that in studying the different texts, why it is that women do not take a predominant role. But Eve is mentioned in as having been part of those that were in Sheol, because it talks about in the first book of Adam and Eve that both Eve died really short after Adam, and that both she and Seth had gone to near the gates of paradise to implore the archangel Michael and to ask the Word of God, who is Christ, to give them oil to anoint Adam so that he would not have to die and that he would not have to suffer. And basically that was the prophecy that Christ would come into the flesh 5,500 years after, and that he would then save all those that had died and that were children of Adam and Eve, the patriarchs, as well as, and both male and female. And why it is that only the patriarchs are mentioned, I don't know, but in my opinion, it's not because there were not any women included or part of those that were contained in Sheol and held in Abraham's bosom until Christ would take them up in what was the first resurrection. In fact, one of the books, The Vision of Paul, which is like the story of Enoch going through the 10 heavens and being brought to, like in the Gospel of Nicodemus, Enoch and Elijah are in paradise already when all of the other patriarchs from Adam to the thief and the cross are then taken up to and allowed to enter into the city of New Jerusalem. That when Paul makes this same kind of journey through the 10 heavens, he is brought into New Jerusalem, paradise, and the Virgin Mary is cited as being there, as well as many of the other male patriarchs, and that she is, one of the few women that is mentioned as being there. And so, in that story, at least, it does, make mention of women having been, having lived and having taken residence in in paradise. And so if you want to know about that, the vision of Paul. And as far as what Jazz is talking about with our having been both sexes, this is my I do speculate that in our first estate, and that angels are both sexes. They're not, and not either, really, not male or female, but both, in that they're hermaphroditic and that they're both male and female, or whole in nature, and not either or. And that the angels don't have sexual organs, and so they're not male or female in that kind of determination, because they don't need to procreate. Now, the angels the watchers that were able to mate with the daughters of Cain, they were placed in male bodies. And that's why it was that they were able to mate with the daughters of Cain, and that they were the ones that birthed a race of giants. And that story is if you want more detail on that, go to the Kebra Nagast, KEBRA NAGAST, which is an Ethiopic holy book, chapter 100 on the fall of the angels, for greater detail on that. All right, let me go ahead and get into the parable of the sower. The first part of the parable talks about the different kinds of people and the different kinds of children that would be born into the world, and that the garden is symbolic of the field of the world. And so I'll read that really quick. It says, "And he spake many things unto them in parables, saying, Behold, a sower went forth to sow. And when he sowed, some seeds fell by the wayside, and fowls came and devoured them up. Some fell upon stony places where they had not much earth, and forthwith they sprung up, because they had no deepness of earth. And when the sun was up, they were scorched, and because they had no root, they withered away. And some fell among thorns, and the thorns sprung up and choked them. But others fell into good ground and brought forth fruit, some 100-fold, some 60-fold, some 30-fold. Who hath ears to hear, let him hear." All right, and I think this is important to this next particular part. He answered and said unto them, Because it is given unto you to know the mysteries of the kingdom of heaven, but to them it is not given. For whosoever hath, to him shall be given, and he shall have more abundance. But whosoever hath not, from him shall be taken away even that he hath. Therefore speak I to them in parables, because they seeing see not, hearing hear not, neither do they understand. And in them is fulfilled the prophecy of Esaias, which saith, By hearing ye shall hear, and shall not understand, and seeing ye shall see, and shall not perceive. For this people's heart is waxed gross, and their ears are dull of hearing, and their eyes they have closed, lest at any time they should see with their eyes, and hear with their ears, and should understand with their heart, and should be converted, and I should heal them. But blessed are your eyes, for they see, and your ears, for they hear. For verily I say unto you, that many prophets and righteous men have desired to see those things which ye see, and have not seen them, and to hear those things which ye hear, and have not heard them." Now this is the part of the parable of the sower. But this is important because Christ is talking to the apostles and the disciples about how it is that even the prophets of old, and those that the patriarch, the men of wisdom, the holders of the secrets, how they did not understand the differences of the bloodlines, the lineages, and they could not understand that what is being referenced in the garden, the parable, the eating of the fruit from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, how that has connections to bloodline and lineages and peoples. And most, even to this day and age, think of that, what happened in the garden, as being a fruit, a pomegranate, a fig, or even an apple. And that they do not understand the deep symbology that helps us, those that have eyes to see, to understand the profound nature of the gospel and its connections to, discernment as far as the world condition and what we are dealing with, in that we have the sons of Cain waging war against the sons of Adam, and most of the world has no idea that there is even a battle or a war going on, and that this war has been going on since the very beginning. And so, how many times do you hear people say, "Oh, we are one people and we're all the same"? This is so far from the truth. We are not all the same, and we do not all have the same desires for even our children and those that are born of our line. We do not even worship the same God, and that's why it was that talks about in the New Testament, when he's speaking to the Pharisees, how I know you are of Abraham's seed, but you seek to kill me. This did not Abraham do, but your father is the devil, and you are a den of vipers. And that he lays the blame for the murder of all the holy men, the men of the disciples, the holy disciples from Abel to Zacharias, upon this particular bloodline, this lineage, and how it is that they are the ones that are responsible for the chaos, even for the murder of our Lord and Savior, of our Savior Messiah. And so if you do not have discernment on those things that we're talking about here, none of this would even make any kind of sense to you. And how all of this is so very important for understanding the condition of the world, and also to what Christ is alluding to in not only Matthew chapter 13, where he lays it out in precise detail, but also in the rest of the gospel, including the Old Testament, because so many people separate the Old Testament from the New Testament just because they don't get it. They don't understand it. And they do not see nor understand how it is that Christ was the fulfillment of the Old. The New Testament is the fulfillment of the Old Testament, and the Old Testament is the prophetic word that laid out in its foundation for what is the New Testament. You cannot separate either, because the underlying truth is that they are all the same story and the same premises laid out throughout. Even like with the differences between Jacob and Esau, and why Jacob was favored and Esau was hated, Isaac and Ishmael, David and the children of Goliath. All of these things are connected to this knowledge and this discernment, this wisdom. And so that's why Christ said, "For verily I say unto you that many prophets and righteous men have desired to see those things which ye see and have not seen them, and to hear those things which you hear and have not heard them." Because even most pastors and preachers and ministers, most men of God and priests, and those that have been studying the Word and studying the gospel for 20, 30, 40, 50 years, even entire lifetimes, they still do not have the eyes to see, nor the ears to hear, nor a mind to understand. And because they miss out on this one aspect of what is the hidden word, what Christ said is, I will utter secrets held, I will utter things held secret since the foundations of the world. They do not understand the gospel, and they still cannot make sense of it, even having read it and studied it for so long. If you're missing this one part, you're missing out on the skeleton key, which unlocks so much more of it. All right, continuing with the second aspect of the parable of the sower. And this is the important one, because this one is helps you to break the riddle. Verse 18, Matthew chapter 13. Hear ye therefore the parable of the sower. Oh, hold on one second. All right, sorry about that. All right. Verse 18. When anyone heareth the word of the kingdom and understandeth not, then cometh the wicked one and catcheth away that which was sown in his heart. This is which receives seed by the wayside. This is the explanation of the different kinds of people. But he that receiveth the seed in the stony place is the same as he that heareth the word, and anon with joy receiveth it. Yet hath he no root in himself, but dureth for a while. For when tribulation or persecution ariseth because of thy word, by and by he is offended. He also that receiveth seed among the thorns is that he that heareth the word, and the care of this world, and the deceitfulness of riches choke the word, and he become unfruitful. But he that receiveth seed into the good ground is he that heareth the word, and understandeth it, which also beareth fruit, and bringeth forth some 100-fold, some 60, and some 30. Another parable. Put he forth unto them, saying, The kingdom of heaven is like unto a man which sowed good seed in his field. This is the key to the riddle. But while men slept, his enemy came and sowed tares among the wheat and went his way. But when the blade was sprung up, the blade meaning when the children were revealed, when they were born, and brought forth fruit, then appeared the tares also. So the servants of the householder came and said unto him, Sir, didst not thou sow good seed in thy field? From whence then hath it tares? He said unto them, An enemy hath done this. The servants said unto him, Wilt thou then that we go and gather them up? But he said, Nay, lest while ye gather up the tares, ye root up also the wheat with them. All right, so before I finish it, while men slept, the enemy came and sowed tares among the wheat. Satan beguiled, seduced Eve, impregnated her with Cain. The tare and also Abel from Adam, both were in the womb, and as twins were born. And so when the blade was sprung up and brought forth fruit, meaning that when she conceived and bare children, then appeared the tares also, that Cain was revealed, and that he was not a child of Adam, he was the firstborn son of the devil. And so this, there appeared the tares. And so the servants of the householder, these are the angels of God, the angels of the Most High, they asked God, "Didst not thou sow good seed in thy field?" And the good seed, of course, were Adam and Eve, and the field is the world. But whence hath it tares? He said unto them, An enemy hath done this. And so he's telling you that the enemy, which is the devil, and it's clarified in the next parable, that the devil is the one that sowed the tares, that he's the one that impregnated Eve, corrupted her, and that is why she conceived Cain, who was and is considered the son of the wicked one, the firstborn murderer, liar, and deceiver, and that he follows after his father, the devil. And so the next part, he said unto them, An enemy hath done this. The servant said unto him, Wilt thou then that we go and gather them up? But he said, Nay, lest while you gather up the tares, you root up also the wheat with them. So he's basically saying, no, just let them grow together. At the end of days, when we bring in the harvest, then we'll separate them. Let both grow together until the harvest, and in the time of the harvest, I will say to the reapers, Gather ye together first the tares, and bind them in bundles to burn them, but gather the wheat into my barn. All right, now I think it's absolutely important that here it says that first the tares shall be gathered, and that they will be bound up in bundles to be burned. But gather the wheat into my barn. Oh, also I want to make mention of something here. And I just posted this on the Fallen Angels TV website. So if you go there, there was a Bible code that was just recently found. And I'm going to see if I can bring up some, because it's very interesting. It's very detailed in its accounting. It's the first blog on the Fallen Angels TV website. And the name of the article is Rapture Bible Code Bombshell, revealing when the rapture will occur. And some of the keywords that were found, searched out, which I was blown away by the extent of some of these phrases. But some of the verses that were sought out and found, and that were all part of this matrix, and I do recommend you check this out for yourself and study for yourself, is sixth seal, day of Christ, the coming of our Lord Jesus Christ, glorious appearing of the great God, sign of blood, moon, we which are alive and remain shall be caught up together with them in the clouds, translated into the kingdom of his dear Son, saints taken, delivered, wicked men left, be saved, O safe. And so all of these different phrases, all of these keywords were found as part of this matrix, which talks about how the rapture would be would come after the opening of the sixth seal. Now, I know a lot of people, especially those that, that listen to John the Baptist and also to Jonathan Clark. They're two of my really good friends, but that, both of them for the longest time were pre-trib rapture believers, and I believe that the rapture or the catching away or the calling up, whatever you want to reference it, that all of that happens on the last day, and that it's mentioned in John that on the seventh trump, that after the sixth seal, the seventh trump, after the tribulation of those days, that this is when it happens. And the church is caught up in order to save them from the judgment that is coming, the wrath of God being poured out on those not written into the book of life. And so you might want to be, look into this particular Bible code, because it's interesting information to say the least. And in my opinion, it just confirms what I wrote in chapter 14 of my book, because I also speak about the rapture in chapter 14 of Lucifer, father of Cain. And I basically say that, it's the last day. All right, let me continue on here, because we're going to run out of time, and this last part is very important. Check the chat room real quick. Okay. Gonna continue on. All right. Yeah, Jazz, I know that, in some of the books it says she's saying if they were twins, how did they have twin sisters? Now, this is a different accounting. In the gospel, in the Torah, in Genesis specifically, it says that Cain was born first, and then she continued and delivered Abel. In the book of Jubilees and the book of Jasher, it makes mention that Cain and Abel, that they were born with twin sisters, and that they were conceived at different times. But that's a whole different accounting. Now, I'm not claiming it to be one way or the other. I'm just saying, telling you what the stories say. But most people that hold the King James Version of the Bible as foundation for their truth, of which I do as well, that this is the story that is portrayed in the gospel, and especially in Genesis, with what happened in Genesis 3 and Genesis chapter 4. And so there is, pseudepigraphal books, pseudepigraphal stories, apocryphal texts that speak of it as occurring differently, but, that's, who knows how it was one way or the other. But as far as the King James Version, the story of what happened in the garden, it speaks of them as being twins born from different fathers. All right, continuing with the text. All right. And now I'm going to go to right after when Christ says, after the multitudes are sent away, and Christ is going to, because he speaks to the multitude in parables, because they're not to have the eyes to see, the ears to hear, nor the mind to understand. But after he sends the multitudes away, the disciples come up to him and ask him to explain the parable of the wheat and the tares. And so he's going to lay it out precisely, without parable, without a metaphor, without symbology. He's going to tell them exactly what he means by the parable of the wheat and the tares. And before he says that, he says this. Before he explains the parable, he says, all these things spake Jesus unto the multitude in parables, and without a parable spake he not unto them, that it might be fulfilled which was spoken by the prophet, saying, I will open my mouth in parables, I will utter things which have been kept secret from the foundation of the world. And so what he's about to explain to them, this is one of those secrets that has been kept, information that has been kept secret since the foundation of the world. Meaning that up until this time, the whole world has gone about in ignorance and without knowledge and without discernment of what he's about to reveal. And so he says this. All right. He answered and said unto them, He that soweth the good seed is the Son of Man. The field is the world, the good seed are the children of the kingdom, but the tares are the children of the wicked one. The enemy that sowed them is the devil. Now, this is, emphasis. First, in the previous parable, when he speaks about an enemy as being the one responsible for sowing the tares, here he is telling you that the enemy that sowed them is the devil. So there's no question that the enemy that is referenced in the parable of the sower is the devil, Satan, the adversary, Lucifer, the fallen cherub, and that he is the one that impregnated Eve, beguiled Eve, and he was responsible for the birth of Cain, and that Cain is indeed his firstborn child, and that Cain and his bloodline and his lineage, they are the ones that are referenced as the tares, and they are completely different from the wheat or the seed of the woman, and they're considered to be the seed of the serpent, the children of the Nakash. All right, so let's read that again. Then Jesus sent the multitude away and went into the house, and his disciples came unto him, saying, Declare unto us the parable of the tares of the field. He answered and said unto them, He that soweth the good seed is the Son of Man. So the good seed, Adam, we know that Adam was made in the image of the Most High, and the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. There's that, that passage from On the Origin of the World that speaks about the three Adams, and that Adam of light is Christ, Jesus, Yeshua, Savior, Messiah, and that the second Adam, Adam of paradise, was created on the sixth day, and that he was made in the image of Adam of light, and that the third Adam, Adam of dust, was a creature of the flesh and part of the fallen world, he that was exiled and banished from, that had lost his immortality, his bright nature, because the sixth day, the second Adam that was created on the sixth day, this Adam was Adam of paradise, which was bright-natured, immortal, and angelic prior to his fall. And all of that is also found in my fourth book, Lucifer, Father of Cain. All right, so continuing. So he answered and said unto them, He that soweth the good seed is the Son of Man. So all the children born of the good seed, Adam's line, are the children of the Son of Man, or Christ, Savior, Messiah, or Adam of light. The field is the world, meaning that the garden and the field, and all the things that took place, is the world. The good seed are the children of the kingdom, meaning those that will inherit paradise, and that are servants, and that following the example of Christ, that follow the commandments, are children of the kingdom. Tares are the children of the wicked one. So the tares, those that were sown by the enemy, they're the children of the wicked one, just as it says in John chapter 8, Cain, who was of that wicked one, same thing. And then to give clarity, the next passage, The enemy that sowed them is the devil. Just in case you were to somehow miss that the tares are the children of the wicked one, and you somehow can't make sense of who the wicked one is, Christ clarifies it absolutely in the very next verse. The enemy, just like the enemy that sowed them in the parable of the sower, the enemy that sowed the tares is the devil. The enemy that sowed them is the devil. So that you can't deny or say that, oh, he's only referring to them as being spiritual children, that Cain, because he was evil, that he's somehow a spiritual child of the devil. No, these are flesh and blood, physical children of the wicked one, children of the devil, children of the Nakash, scions of the serpent. The harvest is the end of the world, and the reapers are the angels. And so he's also equating what happened in the very beginning with Eve becoming beguiled by the devil, by the serpent, by the Nakash, by the winged snake, the guardian of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, that her beguilement and her giving birth to Cain, that is what is also that is what began what he will end with the harvest of the wheat and the tares. And so what happened in the garden, with where the Father and the Son speak about there's going to be enmity put between the seed of the woman and the seed of the serpent, between her sons and thy sons, speaking to the devil, that all of this would be ended with the harvest at the end of the world. That when the reapers, as the angels, are sent out to gather together the tares for burning and binding, and that the wheat are gathered for the barn, that at that time the harvest would ensue, the wheat and the tares that would be allowed to grow up together until the time of the end, that all of that, the enmity, the war, the battle, the differences would become recognizable, and that there would be no denying who was of the wheat and who was of the tares. And that this is the moment where every knee shall bow and every tongue confess, and everyone, the angels, the fallen angels, all of humanity, all those that had incarnated into flesh form, everybody would be brought to judgment and brought before the mercy seat of the Lord. And our actions, behaviors, our thoughts, everything that we did in our lifetime, the things that we had chance to do, the things that we didn't do, all of that will be brought into accord, and those things will convict us. And so you have to ask yourself, are you doing right? Are you doing what you need to do for the time that you have it here upon this planet? Because, we all have sacred duty. We have sacred vow. We have greater roles and missions and then most aspire to fulfill. And that's why the elect is so small. That's why it's a minority, because even though many are chosen, few heed the call. All right, let's continue with the last couple verses here. The enemy that sowed them is the devil, the harvest is the end of the world, and the reapers are the angels. As therefore the tares are gathered and burned in the fire, so shall it be in the end of this world. The Son of Man shall send forth his angels, and they shall gather out of his kingdom all things that offend, and them which do iniquity, and shall cast them into a furnace of fire. There shall be wailing and gnashing of teeth. Then shall the righteous shine forth as the sun in the kingdom of their Father. Who hath ears to hear, let him hear. And so there you have it. This is basically the only thing that is relevant, the only thing that is important in our lives is that we aspire to be counted among the righteous, and that we, remember from whence we are fallen and to do the first works, as it says in Revelation 2, and to count our eternal inheritance as the most important things of our lives, because everything else is superficial. Everything else really does not matter in the grander scheme of things. And so ask yourself in your everyday, am I doing what I think I need to be doing to fulfill my role, to fulfill my mission, to complete my task, to prioritize the kingdom, to help people to come to remembrance, self included, and to seek the kingdom within, and to act upon those things which are truly relevant, truly important, because everything else is just a dream, is just an illusion. And so I pray that all of you, no matter where you are and what you are doing, that you can step up your role and your duty and to fulfill that for your lifetime, and to perform those things which you need to do and to accomplish while you have yet time remaining, because the hour is late. The hour is late, people. I mean, we never know. I mean, it could be today, it could be tomorrow, next week. We do know that the sign of Revelation 12, the woman, the virgin clothed in the sun with the moon beneath her feet, crown of 12 stars, and a child within her womb that is spoken about in Revelation 12, that all of this comes to fulfillment on the Feast of Trumpets 2017, September 23rd, 2017, and that whatever it signifies, that date is quickly coming upon us. And so if we only have, 2 hours or 2 weeks or 2 days or 2 years, what can you do different? What can you do in this day and the next day and in that 2 years that we have remaining to really make a difference for yourself and for others? And so I pray for each one of you as I pray for myself. I pray for your children. I pray for my own. I pray for your loved ones and my mother and my father, those that have already gone on before us, that are waiting, and that we will be brought together with in a reunion of a first estate. I pray that you can do what you can with the time that we have remaining. Prepare yourself, study, and what does it say? And find yourself approved to seek ye out the secrets and to prioritize the kingdom, as it says in Matthew chapter 6, where we're not to worry about anything else, but to just seek the kingdom, and everything else will be taken care of. Everything else will fall into place, and everything else will align of its own accord. Because those that really do seek the kingdom, that really do give their heart and their effort and their love to being servants to humanity and to fulfilling the mandate that Christ gave to us even before coming into flesh and coming into this world, those kind of people are going to be a true blessing to to others that are really seeking answer, that are wanting direction, and that are wanting more than anything to understand those things which we know. And you are so blessed to have discernment. All of you. We are so blessed to be in the know, to be the wisdom keepers, to be the holders of the secrets. And so, do what you can with what time you have remaining. Whatever, and I understand we have to have a foot in both worlds, and we have to have balance, and we have to, we have to cater to, because it can be heavy, all this knowledge and understanding the New World Order and understanding what's coming, that we have to maintain balance, and we have to seek out joy and to find peace and pleasure and in our everyday, life and our everyday world. But also, we're to be productive as much as we can with the time that we have, because really, there's who knows how long it is. So I pray for all of you, and I hope that you've had a blessed Thanksgiving, that you all have much to be grateful for and much to be thankful for, and that your children, your loved ones are also seeking out truth and wanting to know those things which most of the world cares not for, has no concern for, that is caught up in distraction and led astray, and cares not to be found. Most people are totally okay with just being lost and wayward and astray. And that's why the elect is a minority. Because, as I said, many are chosen, few heed the call. Why we're here, what all of this is about. And there's really, in the course of our lifetimes, there's very little that really stands out and that is immortalized. Most everything, as far as just trying to survive and make it into the world, all that is, even though it's necessary, it's wasted time. And so, that's why in Matthew chapter 7, where all of these different people of God, when they come to Christ and they ask Him, we did all these things in your name, we helped the poor and the widow and the orphan, and did this or did that, and He says, away from me, you workers of iniquity, because I know you not. And how true this will play out for so many, especially those that think that once saved, always saved, and that they never have to do anything as far as their works in order to honor the blessings and the opportunity that Christ has extended to all of us, as far as in being able to follow in the example that He laid before us in prioritizing the kingdom, and also fallenangels.tv. And strange as it may seem, the song prior on the DNA and the Children of Cain was written and produced by Rachel Cohen and Cynthia Grace, which are two very wise and very educated individuals. Rachel is a Hebraic scholar, has been involved in the translation of ancient texts for 30 plus years now, and is very well respected in the various circles among rabbis and those that have spent lifetime in studying the ancient discourse. And her sidekick and friend Cynthia is has helped her to understand the Christian perspective and side of how um, the non-Jewish, non-Hebraic individual has perspective on the word. And so they work in tangent together to cover a lot of information, and they were also one of those groups, one of those confirming witnesses that the Most High led me to. I'm walking these pathways of time, hunting, always trying to find a place I can call my own, some place that feels like home. We're lost on journey through this incredibly mystic realm, our lives playing out like a soap opera dream, the strangest far out film. Intense our wandering probes, the search for higher spaces, moments of weird recognition with familiar yet odd traces of moments and passing faces. Elder souls' eyes seemingly embraced myriads of times prior, helping me to mark my changes here as we pass lifetime, knowing we're more than just passing strangers. Friends from different time with old promises to meet, here we greet again in streets bound to each other's lives. It reminds us all of the grander scheme of this most amazing and wondrous dream. Each moment changing just because we pass through. Thankful always I am for moments I'm able to share with you. Welcome, friends. I'm your host, Zen Garcia. This is will be accounted for as far as our behaviors, our actions, the things that we did during embodiment in lifetime and while we were here on the planet with the time that we were blessed to have. Because lifetime is really short. And even though it seems like there's plenty of time every day, eventually, your time runs out, and eventually you are called to either death or to what will be the upcoming gathering of the church, and that judgment will then ensue, and that all those things, all the chances, all the opportunities that we had in our lifetime to service the church, to seek out the secrets, to study the gospel, and to build relationship with the Most High, the Father and the Son, all those things will be called into question. And we will, then have to regard how it is that we spend our time, and hopefully you had coming to discernment, prioritized the kingdom, and did what you could to awaken yourself and others to remembrance of not only the secrets, but who we are. When I came to knowledge and discernment of this information, as far as my fourth book, Lucifer, Father of Cain, and all of that, all that entails with what occurred in the garden and how it connects to the enmity between the seed of the woman and the seed of the serpent, and the ongoing war that began even before our incarnation into flesh form, and that really the original sin has connection to our prior estate, our first estate, and our spiritual embodiment. Before we were hosted in flesh form, before we took up occupancy here in these bodies and on this fallen planet, in this fallen state of being. And so, this ongoing war, which is reflected in the continuance of what is the angst, the enmity between the serpent seed and the seed of the woman, will be ongoing and have continuance until Christ comes again for harvest, and every knee shall bow and every tongue confess, and then all will be brought to judgment, and everybody